On to our August 2024 Salt Lake County Technical Advisory Committee meeting. We have a limited number here in person, so for a couple of these action items, it'd be very helpful for you, for those online to speak up and participate. Our first action item is approval of our May 29 meeting minutes. They were emailed out earlier this week. Is there any comment on the minutes as they were posted? Jordan, you have to let me know if somebody raises their hand or something, because I'm trying to watch that screen, but it's kind of difficult. Okay, not seeing any raise of hands or any comments, I'll ask for a motion to approve minutes.
This is Castle. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, motion to approve from Matt Castle. Do I have a second? Okay, Michael Fazio seconds. With a raise of hand or online, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And again, speaking specifically those online. Okay, not hearing any. We'll move to item number 2, an action item to review and modify some of the projects on our current transportation improvement program in Ben Withridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be with you today. So we do have a couple of board modifications before us today, as indicated in the agenda. To walk us through this here, we'll talk about a request from Cottonwood Heights. This is a project on Bengal Boulevard on Highland Drive to 2160 East with intersection improvements as well as turning movements and bike lanes. Then we'll discuss project in Salt Lake City. This is on the 1300 South bypass project from 2nd East to 5th West. This will provide, or this project as approved currently, is to provide safe bicycle route and a parallel to 1300 South. This was referred to as the bypass project. And in the last project there we'll discuss is 18 or pin 18837, not that that's important. Well, it is important, but anyway, it's the Kensington Avenue project from West Temple to 3rd East and provide safe pedestrian and bicycle routes. We'll actually be combining the lower 2 pins into a project, but we'll talk about them as we get to them. So the first project here is a project in Cottonwood Heights. You'll recall, or many of you will recall, that when this project was reviewed and approved back in 2021, this project was reviewed by the Technical Advisory Committee and was recommended to receive funding and was approved by the Regional Council into the existing TIP. This particular project was going to address the intersection there at Bengal Boulevard and Highland Drive, as well as the bicycle lanes associated with that intersection. But it would mainly address the adding a second left turn lane there on the intersection. There was 1.5+ million approved for the project. The following year, there was a project reviewed by this committee also on Bengal Boulevard and within those same project limits, extending a little more to the northeast. And this was to address bicycle and pedestrian route there on the north shoulder of Bengal Boulevard as it approached the intersection there at Highland Drive. So in discussions with the city, it was identified that we'd tie these 2 projects together. This project was approved for $444,000+ in the TAP funds. So both these projects were combined together. This project was actually moved into the STP program using STP funds for both projects, freeing up the TAP funds in the TAP program. So you may recall that last time we met, we had a wonderful presentation there from Cottonwood Heights that identified a new roundabout that was a project recommended. Well, these projects we're talking about goes further west. So if you were to turn and face west, you can see the improvements. But then as they progress westward, you can see where we lose the shoulder there on the right hand or on the north side of the road, and giving us a very narrow pedestrian and bicycle path. Most of it's off the shoulder of the road. And then there's also improvements there on the south side, which will be addressed. But then you come into the intersection there, which is addressed with the other project. So by tying these two projects together, they begin the design work, and up and through the 30% design on the project, it was engineered, estimated to cost more than $3 million. It was actually $3.1 million. Currently, with the projects combined together with the local match, we had a budgeted $2.1+ million, and that gave us a shortfall of about $955,000 plus. The request from Cottonwood Heights is that we add an additional $891,000 in urban STP funds for these projects, and the city would bring an additional $64,000 plus, with the commitment that they would provide all other resources and funding needed to complete the projects. Any questions on this board modification? Matt, anything you would add?
No, Ben, I think you've covered all of it, but happy to answer if they come up.
Wonderful, thank you. If it's all right, Mr. Chair, I'll go through the other board mod and then we'll call for the motion. So the other projects we want to talk about, it goes back several years also. Well, about 2020, we had an opportunity to review as a technical advisory committee and recommend up through the regional council, which approved it, was a bike path or a bicycle boulevard on 13th South. This was the bypass project extending from 2nd East to 500 West. The request for this project was $325,000. The TAC at the time, we had an available amount of $324,000, and that was the amount that was approved. And the city proceeded to begin work with this and working with UTA in the discussions about providing safe access there to the ballpark, a track station, as well as safety improvements for ped and bike in and around the area. A couple of years later, there was a request from Salt Lake City. This was on Kensington Avenue. This was also a bicycle bikeway for ped and bike. This was between West Temple and 6th East. This project was estimated at a little more than $538,000. The funds recommended for this project was $300,000. Then the following year, Salt Lake City approached and was working on phase 2 of the Kensington project. And this would go from 6th East to McClellan, the trail. This project was estimated at a little more than $587,000, requesting $410,000 plus, and the TAC recommended the available amount of $350,000. Now, all these projects have been underway. The bypass project on 1300 South, improvements have been made, but outside of the federal program, because those improvements were able to be done without some of the requirements that the federal funds required. Not all of the improvements were done as originally scoped in the project. The intent for this ask is to take all 3 of those projects and combine them, and that would give us several benefits. One of the benefits would, it would expand the geographical reach of the projects together. That should be projects, not just project. But it would extend the benefits there, enhance the access for all the users throughout the area. It would also add key bike infrastructure along 13th South, Kensington, and Andrew Avenues. It would include critical intersection safety improvements on Main Street, State Street, and 300 East. It would provide traffic calming elements throughout the area, as well as improve and include signing, striping, and pavement markings. Now, by adding all of those projects together and with the local match would give us a project total of a little more than $1 million. So we got $1,044,000 plus. So that's the board mod for this project. The city would move forward on all of these projects being combined into one if this request is approved. So, Mr. Chair, that's the request before us.
Before I open up to questions and a motion, Ben, I have one question for you. So that 1,444,000 for these combined projects, what was the total available in that project already? Is this an additional ask, or is this just combining all the projects into one?
Just combining all projects into one. No additional funds.
Okay, so no additional funds. It's basically just a paperwork change to combine all those projects into one project.
And tweak the scope
And
of the
tweak the
project.
scope a little bit. Thank you. Okay, so we've discussed the two projects. Any comments or questions from those in the room or those online?
So just for clarification on the Cottonwood Heights project, so those two are being combined with, it was the 2.1 million estimate, was that the two projects combined?
Yes.
Okay.
And
then
so,
the-
yes, so the request was combine the two, approximately 2 million there. They're asking for just short of another million. And Ben, I assume that million is available to be added.
Correct.
And so I assume the intent is to also bid those two projects together to help save costs that way?
Are both projects, with it all combined, is it all going to be bid as one project?
That's correct. We'll put it under one pen and go from there. Yes.
Other questions? Okay, without any other questions, I would ask for a motion to approve, deny, or some other thing on these board modifications.
This is Brittany Ward with Sandy City. I'll make a motion to approve the modifications for both items.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve both, combining both of the projects, well, combining all those projects into two projects. Do I have a second?
Second,
I'll
this is
second.
Becca Rolfe, Salt Lake City.
Thank you for the second. All in favor with a raise of hands? Okay. Any opposed, particularly those online, speak up. Okay. Hearing none, the motion passes. Our next item will also be from Ben Withrich. Realize that on the agenda, this says a review of the 2025-2030 TIP. When when Ben is done with his presentation, we may have a discussion about recommendation for approval of this. Okay, Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everybody. So as you'll recall, back when we had an opportunity to meet at the end of May. Sorry, Jordan. There we go. So when we met on the 29th of May, we reviewed with the technical advisory committees the draft transportation improvement program, the 2030 transportation improvement program, along with the conformity memorandum with that document to go out for public review and comment. You gave us a recommendation to TransCom that document go out for public review and comment. We met with TransCom on the 20th of June. And then the public comment period began on the 29th, and it concluded last Saturday on August 3rd. During that time, for our public review and comment period, we had two open houses. We had an open house on the 9th, which was at the Salt Lake Intermodal area, and then we had one on the 16th, which was up in the Ogden area at the Ogden Intermodal. Today is the 7th. So today we bring before you any information we received from that public review and comment period, so that as the chair has indicated, we'll have opportunity in a minute to discuss the recommendation. The intent is to take your recommendation to TransCom, which will meet next Thursday on the 15th, to request that TransCom make a recommendation to the regional council that they approve the 2025-2030 Transportation Improvement Program. The regional council will meet on the 22nd. We'll hopefully take that recommendation to heart and approve that document. Then that following week, we will, with the other MPOs of the state, prepare the draft Transportation Improvement Program with the Department of Transportation. We essentially submit our tips to UDOT to combine it with the statewide Transportation Improvement Program. And in that document is then submitted to Federal Highways and the Federal Transit Agency for their review, with the intent and the desire that on October 1, we have a brand new 2025-2030 Transportation Improvement Program. And as many of you are aware, if you've been with us for any time at all, our next process will actually begin at the end of this month when we request letters of intent, and we'll go through that schedule in just a minute. So in preparation for our public review and comment period, we provided each of you with a substantial amount of entertainment for a night that you would never forget. You could sit there and you probably took several photos, but you could log on to WFRC.org and you could pull up the Transportation Improvement Program. Now, you may have videos of this that'll be long remembered from your children as something special. But in that particular document, you could click on an individual project and zero right in, and you could leave a comment or you could provide information. There was also a general comment form. And in that information, in addition to the map, we provided the table that had all of the projects that were reviewed and approved through the regional council. That was the 4 programs that the Wasatch Front Regional Council has responsibility to program. That's the Urban STP funds, or the Surface Transportation Program, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, which are the CMAQ projects, the Transportation Alternative Program, or the TAP, as well as the Carbon Reduction Program, or the CRP. In addition to those projects that Wasatch Front, or those programs that Wasatch Front has responsibility to lead out the programming of, are the projects that the Department of Transportation has responsibility to lead out the programming of. Also, in addition to that, are the projects that the UTA, our transit agency, has responsibilities to lead out and program funds. And in addition to all the projects, we have the air quality memorandum that shows determination that, or the analysis determination that the Transportation Improvement Program does conform with an approved regional transportation plan. So all of this information then went out for public review and comment, and in that information, we received several comments. And I believe, Wayne, you're on. Would you like to talk about the public comment summary?
You bet. Thanks, Ben. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. So we received about close to 400 comments, mostly via the interactive map, but a couple dozen from the open houses as well. And we just wanted to share with you a few of the themes in the comments that were made, and let you both hear that and react to it if you'd like. So the themes were: support was expressed for additional safe bicycle infrastructure. Requests were made to safely accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians in several roadway projects. A number of comments were made in favor of front runner strategic double tracking. Requests were made for more transit service and improvements to existing service. A number of commenters asked that more funding be spent on expanding transit instead of on road widening or new construction. And lastly, many comments were made in support of the Rio Grande plan to take railroad lines underground in downtown Salt Lake City. About a third of the total comments were in support of the Rio Grande plan. And that's all I've got. Any questions or comments from the group?
This is Becca Rolfe from Salt Lake City. I just wanted to clarify for the group that the Rio Grande plan, so-called, is not a plan of Salt Lake City's. It is a constituent developed advocacy plan. And so just FYI, that is not a city plan.
Thank you, Becca. I appreciate that clarification. That's helpful to remind all of us.
And if that were to be included in something, we would definitely want to have a review.
Definitely. Any other thoughts or comments? Hearing none, I'll turn it back to Ben.
Thank you, Wayne. So from those comments, so that you're aware what happens to these comments is, as Wayne has gone through and summarized these with just a few bullet points, we will actually go through and with our partners at UDOT Region 1, UDOT Region 2, and UDOT Central, as well as UTA, we will address each one of those comments over the next few weeks, and sometime latter part of September, we'll have a comment for each of those. However, for our TransCom meeting, which is coming up next Thursday in the Regional Council, they will get a copy, which will be part of a public record that'll be available for all, a copy of all of the comments, as well as the responses for those comments. We will also work with each of the regions, UDOT Region 1 and UDOT Region 2, that when they have their roadway management or their pavement management meetings, that any of those comments that are pertinent to an existing project moving forward, they will be reviewed and discussed, and those that will be beneficial will be addressed as well. But we want the public to know that their comments are of value to all of us, that we take that information, we review that information, we evaluate the projects, and we make sure that we're getting the best product for the amount of funds that are being spent on those projects. So that's the point where we are. We're preparing that information now then for our TransCom and the Regional Council. Is there anything you would add, Wayne?
Thanks, Ben. No.
Wonderful. Mr. Chair, that would be all of that information.
Ben, I have one question, just a clarification question. So the projects now included in the 2025-2030 tip that we're reviewing, they're exactly as this board recommended earlier this year. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'll open the floor to any questions or any other comments, but I will call for a motion here in a moment. Okay, not hearing any additional questions or comments. I'll open the floor to a motion to approve the draft 2025-2030 tip and conformity plan.
I just got a slew of them and.
And to meet our schedule that I saw Ben put up, we'll be here all night till we get this right.
Ben, can you hear me? John Miller from.
John, I can hear you.
I motion we approve the 2025-2030 conformity plan and the other plan as presented by Ben.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve by John Miller. Do we have a second?
Chris Norland from Salt Lake City. I second.
Thank you. We have a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing no additional discussion, I'll call for a vote, begin by the raise of hand. And again, for those of you online, any opposed, make that a verbal opposition. Okay, not hearing any, we'll go to, the motion passes, and we'll move to our next item, which again is Ben Withrich.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the last part then, what we want to talk about, and we kind of give a quick preference there that the process is going to start all over again here in just a couple of weeks. And what we want you to be aware of is that in your email coming out at the end of August, when we request direction from the regional council to request letters of intent. Now, for those who might be new, a letter of intent is a real small document, which essentially gives us the name of the project, 1 or 2 sentences on what the objective of the project is, in the from and the to, and what we want to accomplish, and then an estimated ballpark on what that amount would be. We don't need to know all the exact details at this point. We need that information so that we can come back to you and make recommendations. But what's coming out here at the end of the month is you will get a packet through the email that identifies the funding programs from the Wasatch Front Regional Council. Now, the top 4 programs are the capital improvements. That's the ones that we've been talking about. Those are the ones that are included in the transportation improvement program. If you've got a project, if someone in your city is talking, or an elected official is asking, or somebody has an idea of a project and you're not quite sure what funding source to come after or seek, that's all right. That's not a problem. What, to give us a call or send in a letter of intent, and then as staff, as we review those projects, we will make a recommendation to you as to what kind of concept report you should submit, or application maybe for letter. But the things that you need to be aware of is the letters of intent. Boy, I forgot that. I've been doing this now for 20, I don't know, plus years, but I forgot letter of intent. The letters of intent are due September 26th. And then the concept reports will be due on the 12th of December. So that you're aware of those dates coming up. This packet will be available as soon as the regional council gives us that direction to request letters of intent. This is an information item, but it's important that you're aware of the times and the resources that are available for you, so that you as a local government can accomplish a lot of the responsibilities you have. We appreciate all that you do. Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
Next item is a presentation from Harriman City, and they're here in the room with us, so we'll turn the floor to them.
Okay, thank you. While we're pulling that up, I'll just introduce myself. My name's Bryce Terry. I'm the city engineer at Harriman City. So while we're pulling that up, I'll kind of talk. We wanted to talk about a project that we're just wrapping up right now, actually. It's our Harriman Main Street project. So kind of some background. This project wasn't necessarily a STIP-funded project. It was a state-funded project that we received from the legislature for a certain amount of money per year a few years ago. And it wasn't enough to do a project every year, that smaller amount. So our council decided to bond for all of that money because it was a certain amount of money over several years. And so we decided to bond for all of that up front to put it towards a substantial project. And so this project that we'll talk about is about a $10 million project, which for us on a roadway project is quite significant. I know in comparison to some of the larger UDOT projects or regional projects, that might not be a huge project, but for us, that was a pretty significant project. So here's a little bit of a vicinity map. So as most of you know, Harriman's in the southwest corner of Salt Lake County. And this project, so you can kind of see Bangor on the map, is that 154. And then Mountain View's just a little bit west of there, kind of on the border of Harriman and Riverton there. And then if you keep going west where that box is off of 126 South, or at I-15, it's 123rd. But if you keep going west, that's where the project is at. So if you've ever been to Butterfield Canyon, or if you kind of know where the Kennecott area is, this road leads out that way to Bacchus Highway. And it's a connection kind of from our city center out west. And so, yeah, we'll kind of jump into that. And here's kind of a quick preview of what that road looked like in the original condition. So it was a 2-lane, and in some cases, it's been named Harriman Highway, Bacchus Highway as it comes around, but we've recently renamed it with this project to Harriman Main Street all the way out to Butterfield Canyon. And I think on the Tooele side, you can connect through Butterfield Canyon to Settlement Canyon on the Tooele side. So yeah, just kind of a quick timeline so you can kind of see how long this project took. So I didn't include the full design time, but we began acquiring right-of-way in September of 2022, and the final design was done in November of 2022. We then went out to bid and received bids in January of 2023, and then construction began about a month later. And then you'll find out about this in the presentation. So we did have some hiccups in the right-of-way acquisition process. So as a spoiler alert, we did have to use eminent domain. Our city council voted to pursue eminent domain. There was a court hearing. Eventually, we gained occupancy, but it wasn't as quickly as we had hoped for the project. And that just means that we could now work on the land that we needed to widen the road. Eventually, while construction's going on, we did settle with the property owners, and then eventually, just this month, we completed the project. So here, hopefully this works. Kind of just a quick before video to kind of give you some context. Yeah, will that, if you click on the play, will that work? So our GIS department has a drone that we like to fly up and kind of look at some projects. So this is the video before. You can kind of see it's a 2-lane road, no curb gutter or sidewalk. It's kind of a mix of land uses out here of residential, agricultural, not much commercial, but between those two, agricultural and residential, and different densities, right, throughout. You have some larger lots, some single family homes. And the interesting part of this is that those power lines you see as we're kind of down to the left, those actually had to end up getting swapped to the north side of the road, or the right side of your screen here. But yeah, it's a pretty long road, like we showed, about 1 mile in length, and a pretty significant project for us. You can see there is some newer development in the area here on the left and on the right in the middle of the project, but then kind of on the both ends, it's kind of more rural, historical land use in the area. So we don't have to watch this whole video, but just to get some context of what it looked like before. So originally the design and our master plan was for what we call a major collector road, 80-foot right-of-way, 3 lanes with essentially a 10-foot shoulder, but that 10-foot shoulder is used as a buffered bike lane. And then at intersection, it turns into a shared lane and a right turn lane. So, and then 5-foot park strips, 5-foot sidewalks with landscaping. And then as you saw in that video, there's a lot of power infrastructure that we were hoping to relocate underground. We got to about 30% design and realized that cost was quite significant to do that original concept design. So we went to our city council and kind of gave them some options, and they chose to skinny up the road a little bit. So we're at a baseline, a 68-foot right-of-way, which is our minor collector width. So same 3 lanes as far as capacity goes. And then bike lanes, but they would no longer be buffered bike lanes, just standard bike lanes. This is a design speed of 40 and posted 35, just for some context. And then we kind of updated the landscaping, and due to budget, the decision was to not bury the power underground. It would still require relocating, but it would stay aerial rather than going underground. So yeah, that we kind of worked that about 30%. We did have a consultant that hired a construction to give a agency to kind of give us a mock bid at that point. And so we really dialed in what the costs would be before the bid. So some major issues or goals of the project. There was a brand new elementary school built in this area that we were hoping to get sidewalks to the school. It was a new school in a new area that really had no great path to the school. So a big part of this project was to build those sidewalks to establish a route to a new elementary school. There was existing private irrigation systems, so 2 private irrigation companies that ran along this road and in the right of way that we had to work with and to rebuild their systems. And I won't go into much detail with that, just that that's a interesting kind of situation anytime that we're working to build someone else's infrastructure with our money. There's always back and forth, right? They want something better than what's existing, and we say, hey, you had this in the ground, we'll give you this for this reason. We're disturbing your pipe, so we'll give you as good or better than what you have today. And then, as I've hinted at and talked to, right-of-way acquisition, that was kind of the biggest hurdle or obstacle in completing this project. And then also that I've hinted at, utility relocation. So that was power and communication relocation. So to talk about the walking routes to school. So this is kind of, that blue line's the school boundary, and the project where it kind of says Harriman Highway there, that diagonal that comes down, and those that aren't in the room won't see where I'm pointing, but that Harriman Highway label is where the project is, and that brand new school is just north of there. You can kind of see where that cul-de-sac dead ends at the top there at the north. So that's the new school. And so all that blue area, except for a very low portion at the bottom of it, is in the school boundary and within the walking area for this school. So as you saw in that video, Harriman Highway is what it was called. So people did drive it fast. There was no curb, gutter, or sidewalk. So there's a big concern on how to get kids to school. So the first year of the school opening, the school district actually bused all students to the school that were on the south side of Harriman Highway. They called them safety shuttles, but the next year they were counting on the city building sidewalks for the school to get to the school. And we'll talk a little bit about the right-of-way delays, but the goal was to start construction in January and have the sidewalks built by school starting the next school year in August time. That did not occur. Because of our right-of-way delays and utility relocation delays, there were a good portion of the sidewalk was done then, but a good portion was not. And so we actually had to partner with the school district in getting kids to school. The city participated with the school district to provide buses until December. So from August to December, they continued those safety shuttles. And that was a little bit of a concern and an issue that we had to kind of figure out how to get kids to school while construction was still going on. So just to get an idea of the acquisition on this, so there were 22 parcels that we actually had to buy land from or purchase property. 4 of those are the ones that we ended up having to use eminent domain, and they were all part of the same family. So they were 4 individual parcels, but really one landowner between those 4. and then 12 parcels where we were purchasing an easement on land, and then 36 parcels additional to those. So it was about a total of 60 parcels that only required a permit to enter and construct, or in other terms, a temporary construction easement. So there were 60 parcels that we really met with and tried to acquire property from or obtain these permits to enter and construct. So yeah, the big issue that we ran into is that there were a couple of property owners, and really one property owner that owned multiple parcels that we could not come to an agreement with. And so it came to a point where staff and our city council recommended moving forward with eminent domain, which I've kind of just put down the requirements. There's a lot of requirements before you can even consider or put up for a vote eminent domain when negotiating right away. So one of those is to provide a written notice to the property owner, provide the property brochure that the state has produced, and it guides property owners through their options before eminent domain takes effect. There has to be at least 30 days of good faith negotiation. You can't just jump into it without negotiating with the property owner. There's a 4 options letter that kind of goes over, okay, we're at the point of eminent domain. Here are 4 options we can proceed with. And that discusses that for the property owner. And then we have to have a public hearing sent out. And then at that public hearing, the property owners have to be given a chance to be heard in a public forum. So for us, that was a city council meeting. And then finally, city council has to vote publicly to make that decision. So our city council did choose to move forward with that. It was quite a fun time during that. And so you can kind of see the timeline for us. Negotiation began in November of 2022 with these property owners. Construction was rolling around about February, and we were hoping to have it wrapped up pretty shortly thereafter, but it didn't end up getting done. And so in March, City Council approved the motion to use eminent domain. And then so there's 2 steps after that. Once you've chosen to move forward with eminent domain, is to gain occupancy of the land, and that has to be granted by a judge. And that gives the permission for the city to start working on the land that's needed for the widening project. And then the second part is the amount that the land is worth, or determining the market value of the property. So generally, from what I understand, the occupancy comes first so that the construction project can move forward. And then the actual amount that gets paid to the property owner is determined at a later date. And that happened in our case. Generally, it'll be a judge that decides on both of those. But in our case, the judge gave us occupancy, and then there was a settlement with the property owners outside of court. So that was just our process. So you can kind of see the area that we're talking about. So the biggest issue, there were more than just this, but the property owners wanted to be paid to the center of the road. This is an existing road and has existed for 100 years. And so there was a dispute on what was what should be compensated for. As many of you know, state law allows an existing roadway, if there's no interruption to it and the public's used it for more than 10 years, to be considered dedicated by use, or it becomes a public road, even if it is private road, if it's been used by the public for over 10 years. Without the property owner interrupting it. Now, there are obviously technicalities to that, but generally speaking, that's where the disagreement was. This property owner wanted to be paid all the way to the center line of the road. So just ballpark numbers, we're talking about, the city had an appraisal done for $25,000 for this. The property owners were hoping more, for like $300,000 for this. So a lot of people ask, is it worth it to do eminent domain once you have to pay legal fees and go through the courts? And in our case, it wasn't much of a comparison. That gap of, we're offering $25,000, that's where we think we're at. They're wanting 300,000. The legal fees didn't really come up close to making up that gap. So for our council, it made sense. The project, we wanted to get these sidewalks in before school started. We wanted to address that safety issue. So that's why there's more reasons than that, but that's one of the reasons we went this route. Okay, and then another kind of hiccup or slowdown in our construction schedule was power relocation. So I don't know how much, the group probably knows a fairly good amount about power kind of setup. So they have a distribution line, which is their lower voltage that goes to the homes. And generally they're on the smaller wooden poles. And then there's a transmission system, which is generally their higher voltages and their more big steel poles, if you've seen those before. So we had to relocate both. Distribution kind of ran along the whole project, as you saw in that video. So we did have to move, relocate pretty much that entire line and work with Rocky Mountain to do that. As most cities, we have a franchise agreement with them that helped kind of guide that process on what was paid for and who would move what and kind of the timelines there. But in addition, there were other utilities also on those poles. Comcast was one of those that was also on those poles that we had to relocate. And then the transmission side is a little bit harder to get done, as you can imagine. Higher voltages, heavier loads, much larger infrastructure as far as the poles go. And so we thought we were good because we got started about a year before this project even got thought about. We were starting to work on this. In the end, that transmission pole still delayed the project and actually just got completed about 2 months ago. And that was a combination of working with Rocky Mountain Power's transmission team and Comcast. Again, they were also on this line. But it took about 3 years for that pole to go from that blue spot to that red spot. It was kind of right in our curb line. And we thought about just, altering the road to go around the pole. But we weren't comfortable with that kind of wowie in the sidewalk or in the curb to mess up the project. So because of that, it did end up taking 3 years. And there's a lot of detail in that I could kind of talk to those that are interested on what took so long and what we could have avoided. One of the biggest thing is last summer, well, let me take a step back. It took about 6 months to get the design approved and Rocky Mountain team to redesign and have that new location in the park strip like we were showing. And then it took about a year to order the new pole in I don't know if it's still this way, but the steel was really backed up back in 2022, 2023 timeframe. And then the pole came about in the summer of our project. So we began in January and we were hoping that it would be ready by July. But then Rocky Mountain Power told us, hey, we can't work on transmission lines during the summer. The loads are too heavy with air conditioners going on. So we have to wait till the fall. So then they came in the fall, put in the new pole and transferred the line. And then they ended up putting the wrong type of attachments on that new pole. So Comcast couldn't relocate onto the new pole as well. So then we had to wait 6 months for Comcast to get a new pole and to relocate off of that. So long story to say that when dealing with the transmission side of Rocky Mountain Power, plan a long time. So like I said, about 3 years in total for us. So this was one of the concerns with our current or before road here is that curve didn't meet AASHTO standards for radius. Additionally, you can see there was a Jersey barrier kind of put right on the edge of the road, which was a concern. If someone is not paying attention, then they're going to have a heavy impact right into those Jersey barriers that may seriously injure them or worse. So as part of that, we had the design team look at what it would take to change that. So you can kind of see this is right in the middle of construction where they've got the curb and gutter in, but they haven't taken out the old road yet. So you can kind of see the difference there in what it used to be to changing that curve, flattening it out to meet engineering standards, and to create a safer corner there. And then kind of finally, once it was paved, kind of the final product of what that looked like. And then, yeah, just one more video to kind of go over what the final product ended up looking like after about 2 years of work. And I forgot to mention, you can kind of see here, when we switched to the slimmer, kind of skinnied up road that eliminated the 10-foot shoulders and went from buffered bike lanes to standard bike lanes, we did end up widening out to that original 80-foot right-of-way at intersections where we would give a dedicated right turn lane and dedicated left turn lane. So it wasn't like, hey, we just skinnied up the road the whole way through. There were areas where you can see here where we added a right turn lane or a left turn lane at intersections, and that center turn lane, yeah, kind of right here, you can kind of see turns into a left turn lane and a right turn lane, and then the bike lane through. So we tried to keep capacity the same as if we built it an 80-foot right of way or a 68-foot right of way, but then expanded at intersections that made sure our queue lengths weren't delayed or slowed as compared to if we had the full length here, 80 feet. So yeah, that's about it for the project. There are a couple of things, as I mentioned, lesson learned here from this project. So right-of-way acquisition, obviously no one anticipated us having to use the eminent domain process, but it does take time. It is effective. It did get us the ability to work in the area, but it took a while. It wasn't a quick process between city for a city council decision for being able to work, and then actually get a decision from a court is not a quick process. But for us, it was one that was necessary, and without it, we would still be struggling on some of those issues. And then for power relocation, I kind of went over this. For the distribution side of things, it took about a year to get Rocky Mountain Power to relocate those, and then transmission poles, 3 years is what it took us. So, and that took a lot of babysitting those daily check-ins and checking in as often as we can. But I'm sure the other partners in the room have dealt with similar situations. And then this one, because we had so many homes on this road, about 60 roads that had driveways that tied into the road, we had our consultant develop a property owner exhibit for each property owner, which was super helpful in acquisition, but also during the project to say, hey, this isn't the final state, your final state's what's on your paper. That meant kind of, hey, your driveway is gonna have a little bit steeper slope because the road came up a little bit, or your sod's gonna tie in here and it's gonna have a slope, or kind of different ideas about landscape restoration. There was in those wordings, and I think by state law, it's required if we're gonna disturb someone's property that we restore it as good or better condition than it was in when we disturbed it. But there was some confusion on that. Like I said, a driveway, that's referring to if we're disturbing a concrete driveway, we're gonna make sure we put it back in as good as condition or better, meaning that the thicknesses are gonna be either better or the same as existing. The material is gonna be as good. So we had asphalt driveways, concrete driveways, dirt driveways, or road-based driveways. But the property owners then said, hey, this isn't as good as the existing because my slope is steeper than it was before, right? And so I think from the beginning, we might clarify a little bit more of what that means by more the material and the workmanship will be as good as existing or better, but maybe in as far as property owner perceives, it might not be a better situation than they were in before or as good as existing. And that kind of goes along with grade changes in general. We hear a lot of the property owners not realizing, hey, the roads, because you have curb and gutter and sidewalk now that's higher than the existing road, that means the impacts are that my house is feels a little bit lower than it used to be. The driveways have to tie in at a certain slope. So in general, just communicating, hey, this is going to raise the road up a little bit, would have been, I think, helpful in our sense. So that's all I've got, but I can answer any questions on the project or in general.
Mayor Burton has a question. He's wondering if you guys have no parking signs installed along those bike lanes.
We do not yet. That is a concern that we're looking at and possibly installing. There is kind of a thought from the city side here that we'll target where the issues are. Like I said, it's about a mile-long road, and target wherever we see issues of it and not necessarily do the whole thing. And no park the whole length on both sides, but just where we see those issues. If we continue to see those issues, then we would kind of pursue that no parking in those areas.
And you have another question. Chris with Murray is wondering who did your design.
Yeah, so our consultant on the design was WCG Wall Consultant Group. They did our design, and we also used their right-of-way agent to help us acquire property. So there's a question about undergrounding utilities. So I think there was a lesson learned in that. Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, so we didn't end up undergrounding the power as we talked about it. It was quite expensive to do so. So like most cities, probably, we have a franchise agreement with Rocky Mountain Power that essentially says if they're in our right of way, their infrastructure, their poles, they will relocate on their own cost to get out of the way of a project of ours, out of the right of way, or even within the right of way, out of the roadway. But as soon as we ask them to go underground, meaning they'll relocate and just keep their poles aerial or their lines aerial. But as soon as we ask them to go underground, the city has to cover that kind of betterment cost to take those lines underground. So we did learn, I guess, that it is very expensive to do that on a long area. So we just focused on where the intersections of traffic signals would be, where they might interfere with traffic signals, or where crossings were important to be underground. And so we focused on those going underground, but not the entire line.
Okay, and then Jay Miller, it looks like he has a hand raised. If you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, John from Mill Creek. Quick question about your trees and the park strips.
Oh, yeah.
Who ultimately ends up watering that? Is that on the city or is that on the adjacent resident?
Yeah, so Harriman's gone back and forth on different projects on whether we even landscape the park strips, or if we give them to the residents we'll sleeve and allow irrigation to be put in those park strips, but or whether we just put it on the resident 100% to install the landscaping and we just install the curb and gutter. This project, City Council directed us to install the park strip landscaping and in this case, we're maintaining the park strip landscaping. It's all tied to one irrigation system and meter. And so in this case, we're maintaining that entire length of park strip. And that was a little bit because the area east of there had already kind of set up that system along Main Street, but that's not 100% what Harriman does. But in this case, that's what we chose to do. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you for our presentation and all those who participated today. Last item, do we have any other business anybody would like to bring up? Recognize if you do, you'll be between that and us adjourning. Okay, not hearing anybody, I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thanks.